Blazing Rants are a segment where I discuss topics related to the subject of video games and/or anime. It contains my raw biased opinion and is created for the purpose of your debate, examination, or discussion. Now that that's cleared up, let's begin. Masterpiece. By definition, a product of outstanding artistry, skill, or workmanship. This term is reserved for those rare instances where something is able to go above and beyond the qualities and expectations within their respective fields. This applies to art, literature, theatre, movies, and even video games. While it is subjective as to whether or not something is a masterpiece, games that are able to achieve this status not only receive universal acclaim, but often have a substantial impact on the people who play them. The same way a story can inspire a generation, a performance can bring someone to tears, or how a single moment can have more meaning than an entire lifetime. I'm sure we've all had this type of experience at some point in our lives, and one of the most prominent examples I can think of in regards to video games is a little gem by the name of Xenoblade Chronicles. I'm sure just about anyone with a good amount of gaming experience has either played or knows about Xenoblade Chronicles, before Shulk was in Smash. And those I've talked to about it, or whether it's simply a topic of discussion, acknowledge that it is an absolutely marvellous piece of programming and one of the best experiences you can have playing a video game. A true diamond of RPGs and one of the greatest games of the 7th generation. This is all well and good, but after completing the game for myself, I have to ask, why exactly is Xenoblade Chronicles a masterpiece? I mean, it's a fantastic game without a doubt, but there are other games that I feel are just as good, if not better. Plus, most games that earn the reputation of masterpiece tend to be innovators of or set the standard for their respective genres, and from my perspective, Xenoblade Chronicles didn't do that, yet somehow it's still considered one of the greatest games of our time. So that begs the question, what makes Xenoblade Chronicles a masterpiece? Let's find out, shall we? First, let's have a little history lesson. Xenoblade Chronicles, released in Japan in 2010, is an action role-playing game for the Nintendo Wii developed by Monolith Studios. Upon its release, it was met with phenomenal praise. Critics and audiences loved it, it was a hit in both Japan and Europe, and there was so much of a fan demand for it in the States that they launched the campaign Operation Rainfall to bring it, along with Pandora's Tower and The Last Story, over to the West. Since then, Xenoblade Chronicles has become somewhat of a household name for RPG and Nintendo fans, frequently making its way into many best RPG, Wii games or games in general lists, as well as Shulk being playable in Super Smash Bros. And now the once standalone Star Child has become its own franchise after getting 2 sequels and a 3DS port, so it's obvious that Xenoblade Chronicles is greatly revered among gamers. But why exactly? Let us begin with the story. Xenoblade Chronicles takes place in a universe where 2 Goliaths known as the Bionis and the Mechonis fought an earth-shattering battle until one day they dealt blows that froze them in place for centuries. Since then, various races came into being and evolved on each of these titans, and in the present day, war has taken place between the Homs and the Mechon. The main star of our story is Shulk, a weapons developer on Colony 9. After a quick prelude about said colony, a healthy dose of backstory, and spending time with his friends Fiora and Rhine, Shulk discovers to his horror that the site is being attacked by a horde of Mechon, and though the group try to fight back, their efforts are ultimately in vain. That is until the war hero Dunban appears with the legendary Monado in hand, the weapon capable of killing the Mechon. During the fight, Dunban's injuries catch up with him and they end up cornered. Shulk then leaps for the Monado, and as it glows in his hands, he sees a vision of what looks to be the future, and with this knowledge, he avoids a fatal attack. With the Monado by his side, Shulk is able to eventually fight off the Mechon, but at a very heavy cost, and the next day, Shulk and Ryan make it their goal to pursue and destroy the Mechon for what they have done. That's the premise of the story, and being perfectly honest here, it doesn't seem like much, does it? A young boy destined for greatness finds a legendary item that grants him power, and now he's out to save the world with his wisecracking best friend? Yeah, real original, I know. Well, while Xenoblade seems simple, how the story advances is beautifully done. The way in which it goes about establishing its world and the inhabitants, the themes and ideas explored throughout the narrative, I find it all to be very interesting and exceptionally well written stuff. Plus, each component is used to build upon and add to the story, not be a spur of the moment thing or an idea that forced its way in at the last minute. Something that should be noted is that Xenoblade Chronicles is a very large game, clocking in at around 70 hours for just the main quest, and as such, the story evolves into something very epic and grand by the end. Shulk and Ryan's journey to defeat the Mechon is the driving force in the plot, but as they keep moving forward, the reasons for doing so become more complex, bringing into question various themes like the horrors and moral grey of war. Yes, I like using that phrase a lot, I know. How revenge consumes and affects people, prejudices against other races, the concept of playing God and changing the course of one's destiny, and so on. As each new character is pulled into the battle, the game expands upon the history of the conflict and why each person is involved in this fight, as well as introducing new species and races that emphasize just how large of an effect this war's had on the world. What I love about Xenoblade's story is that while all this may seem like a lot to take in, the game only focuses on what it needs to at the right time. It doesn't needlessly dump exposition on the player or pull something out of left field for the sake of moving forward. Everything that occurs happens for a reason, as the narrative is simple enough for anyone to understand and relate to, but there's an abundant amount of themes and ideologies to give the game more gravity and meaning, which I feel gives Xenoblade a lot more depth and quite the timeless feel, making the storyline genuine and relatable, and this extends to the characters too. The cast of Xenoblade Chronicles are some of the most delightful, vibrant and interesting characters in just about any video game I've played, as each of them are completely unique, complex and just overall remarkable. Even the side characters are given the exact amount of screen time they need, and these aren't just one and done people, mind you. They all come back towards the end of the game, as everyone has a stake in this battle. Everyone in Xenoblade serves a purpose, they each have a story to tell, all of them matter. Yes, some have bigger roles in the game than others, but at the end of the day, they are each their own person, not a plot device or cliche. Whether it be the bitter and war-torn Atharon, the refined and compassionate Callian, the marvellously malicious Metalface, everyone in Xenoblade feels real. Nowhere is this better demonstrated than with the main cast. Naturally, they get the most character development and screen time, but Shulk, despite being the main character, isn't the only one who significantly changes during the story. They all do. Each character that joins your squad has a substantial impact on the story and the rest of the team, made apparent by how much they interact with each other throughout the game, and said interactions feel incredibly sincere. The more you play, the more you see and feel each of them grow and evolve, either through cutscenes or heart-to-hearts, which is basically this game's answer to support conversations in Fire Emblem. However, you cannot marry anyone here and have kids, so sadly, this isn't Waifu Chronicles. At least not yet anyway. While I can't speak for everyone, at the very least I connected with these characters. I wanted to see them get through every dilemma. I wanted to go on this journey with them, and while there's a chance you may not like all of them, I'm confident that at least one person has the potential to warm your heart. For me, it was Melia. One of my favourite moments in the game is when the group gets separated and winds up on a beach. Here the game shifts between various party members as they explore different sections of the landscape, resulting in scenes of the characters reflecting on the journey they've taken, how much different they are now, what their ultimate goal in life is going to be, how they feel about everyone else in the group, and so on. This was the moment where Xenoblade really tugged at my heartstrings and made me grow so attached to the group. The game made it clear that they weren't singular personality traits or genre-specific cliches. This boy isn't a generic blank slate self-insert destined hero. This is Shulk. I do not see a stereotypical dumb best friend and wisecracking sidekick here. I see Rhine. This lady wasn't a token precious princess or forced love interest. This is Melia. That man wasn't merely a mental figure and signature sensei. That was Dunban. These were not tropes. They were not space fillers, box tickets, or anything like that. These were people, as sincere and alive as you and me. Well, that's certainly a lot to take in, but the point I'm trying to make is that the tale of Xenoblade Chronicles and its characters will last a lifetime. However, this is a video game at the end of the day, and what good is a story if you can't have fun gameplay to go along with it? A phrase Fire Emblem Fates took a little too seriously. Xenoblade Chronicles at its core is a typical JRPG. We explore vast locations, fight increasingly difficult enemies, level up and learn new skills, use different party members each with their own unique abilities, manage equipment, take down bosses, all that jazz. So what exactly does Xenoblade bring to the table to set it apart from the rest? Well, first and foremost, all battles take place in real time instead of having to deal with random encounters, allowing the player to pick and choose their fights at will, for the most part, which I feel gives the game a great sense of freedom and prevents the player from being bogged down by having to deal with enemies you have no intention of fighting. In addition, Xenoblade's battle mechanics are some of the best implemented into any RPG I've played. The game employs an auto-attack system, where the characters will automatically do basic attacks at their own discretion. You ever play Final Fantasy XII? Well, there you go, same basic principle. However, the game weaves in elements from MMORPGs as well. In this case, the use of character arts, which are a selection of special attacks that each character can perform that recharge over time. And the way in which the game utilizes them is pure genius. Allow me to explain. During battles, you have the ability to move around and attack the enemy from different angles, and certain arts are designed to be used when facing specific directions, as they can apply additional effects like break, sleep, topple, daze, and so on. This encourages players to think about their placement in battle as well as which arts to use at the right time, and it's thanks to this that the game makes sure that every character is a viable option. While all of Shulk's buddies excel in specific areas, None of them are overpowered or easily replaceable, plus they all level up at around the same pace and the game is structured in a way that you really need to grind enemies to progress. Speaking of enemies, there are an obscene amount of different foes to encounter, so it's wise to make use out of everyone as certain adversaries have specific weaknesses or abilities that only a select few can exploit or counter, but no matter which characters you prefer or how they fit your playstyle, any combination can work, so it's always good to experiment with different teams and formations for different results. Perfect example being the chain attack system, where all 3 party members can perform selected arts one after another. Think of it as an ultimate attack if you will, as you can deal huge amounts of damage and really turn the tide of battle in your favour, especially if you have characters whose arts can be combined together for devastating effect. Xenoblade Chronicles does a brilliant job at making battles considerably exciting and streamlined, allowing it to be unique and cleverly avoid some of the most common annoyances found in most RPGs. How many times in other RPGs do you get a party member that is either so good they make all other characters who came before completely useless, or someone who is so underleveled there's no point in using them? In Xenoblade, no one is useless and no one can simply solo the game. Also, let me ask you this, how often do you find yourself just mashing the attack button or running away from foes since you either have the best attacks in the game and can one-shot them, or no intention of fighting them in the first place? Not in the case of Xenoblade. With a few exceptions, you can decide who you want to fight. As since the game is so big and open, you can easily avoid or confront whoever you want to. The only time this works against you is when you unintentionally encounter enemies on the world map that dwarf you in both size and stats, but they tend to be placed in locations you really shouldn't be exploring at that point in time, and they generally don't overcrowd areas or interrupt battles. They saved all of that for the sequel. When Shulk and the gang aren't fighting the good fight, Xenoblade Chronicles plays out a lot like an adventure game. There is a significant emphasis on exploration, as you have to seek out new areas by travelling up, down, and all around the Bionis and Mechonis, from the arms to the leg, chest, and even right up its ass.
You have got to be kidding!
This I feel adds to the sense of freedom Xenoblade Chronicles prides itself on, helped by the overall size of the game, but I'll talk about that later. Finally, there's one particular mechanic exclusive to Xenoblade Chronicles which adds an enormous layer of depth to the game: visions. Through the use of the Monado, Shulk is able to see glimpses of future events, and his character development is heavily based around how he deals with what's going to happen, or even if he should, but the game also makes it into an ability when fighting opponents. Whenever an adversary is ready to deal a powerful attack, the game will freeze momentarily to show you what attack is going to be performed, who will be attacked, and what the effect will be, and it's up to you to deal with the situation. I think visions are a fantastic part of the game, acting as a massive turning point for Shulk's character and putting further emphasis on strategy and adapting to any and all situations, and it's a good thing too, since if Xenoblade used a more traditional battle system combined with the sheer size of this game, Xenoblade Chronicles will quickly get boring. Speaking of size, Xenoblade Chronicles is a breathtaking spectacle, as the sheer scope of this game's world is a crowning achievement and something to truly be marvelled at. Every area is enormous and packed to the brim with detail. Each landscape has its own distinct style, they're all incredibly unique and expertly designed, with thriving ecosystems and so many memorable set pieces, as well as being home to fascinating landscapes that really make you feel like you're travelling up a titan. From vast open fields, claustrophobic caves, war-torn battlegrounds, futuristic havens, snowy mountains, Jurassic jungles and so on, the earth and metal that make up the Bionis and Mechonis are just as flourishing as the people that live on it. The scenery isn't just for show though, as what you see right before your eyes, you can explore at your own discretion and gape at just how much was crammed into this game. Don't be surprised that on your first, second, or even third playthrough, you won't find enough time to see all the game has to offer. And that's good. You'll discover something new each and every time you play the game, and the way in which progression is handled makes it so that you always know where you need to go, but not how to get there. That's purely up to you. So you don't have to worry about getting lost or being forced into long linear hallways that are filled to the brim of enemies you must defeat as your only means of progression. Final Fantasy XIII, this ain't. However, all of this comes at a cost, as Xenoblade Chronicles from a graphical standpoint is somewhat lacking. Now in the game's defense, it was on the Nintendo Wii, and while that console was able to produce some truly beautiful games like Super Mario Galaxy and Metroid Prime 3, there's only so much that little thing could output, so it's only natural that Xenoblade Chronicles wouldn't be the shiniest set of silverware. You can see this just by looking at the character models. Notice how low of a polygon count they have, hardly HD quality I know. However, it's not something I find distracting or problematic. In fact, if anything, Xenoblade uses this to its advantage. The blocking and jagged appearance of the game makes for some very unique and distinctive landscapes, structures, enemies, and so on, which I see as a way of giving the game more of an identity, and I kinda like the fact that it looks this way. Xenoblade Chronicles is very clever with how it compensates for the lack of processing power, as the game favours using more elaborate designs and textures instead, which in my eyes gives Xenoblade a greater sense of personality than even some of the most graphically intensive games of the time, a prime example being the Mechon, which are some of my favourite enemies in any video game. The Mechon have this very animal, almost insect-like look to them with their body structure and composition, but their colour schemes are used to draw attention away from the basic shapes and add to the visual aesthetic, making for some of the most creative creatures in any video game. I also have to commend Xenoblade Chronicles for its art style, as I feel it takes the best elements from both Western and Japanese RPGs. Species like the High Entia, of the Bionis and the Mechonis, the Monado as well as the final boss, who I will not spoil, definitely look similar to what you see in the Final Fantasy, Tales of or Phantasy Star game, but at the same time, the majority of the Homs characters, the more organic looking enemies and places like Colony 9 and 6 have a much more Western look to them along the lines of Fable, Dragon Age and Witcher. This allows Xenoblade to stand out amongst many other JRPGs, and everything it does is used as a way to work around its faults. Just look at Melia, those are some really jagged curls you've got on you, girl. But that doesn't matter, since the rest of her outfit is so beautiful, you don't pay attention to it. What about Dunban? I mean, is that arm of yours really in a lot of pain, or is it just a faded texture map? But again, it doesn't matter as the rest of the design draws your attention away from it, and Xenoblade does this constantly, expertly using its limited resources to hide its deficiencies and bring out the best in its presentation. But presentation isn't just about what you see, it's also about what you hear. Oh yes! If there's one aspect of Xenoblade Chronicles that everyone, and I mean everyone, goes nuts over, it's the soundtrack. This game's musical score consists of some of the most varied, impactful, memorable and downright incredible pieces of music I have ever heard. And this soundtrack was not the work of a single individual, instead it was the combined effort of 6 different artists, those being, and sorry if I mispronounce these names, Manami Kiyota, Tomori Kudo, Hirao Yamanaka, Kenji Himoratsu, Yoko Shimomura, and Yasunori Mitsuda. According to behind the scenes info, many songs had to be rewritten during development, and by the end the team came up with more than 90 tracks for this game, and good lord did it pay off. Having all these splendidly talented people present allowed the team to take advantage of what they specialised in and focus on particular aspects of the game's music, in order to bring out the full effect of each song. And if they're watching this right now, which I highly doubt, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for creating some of the best music I've had the pleasure of hearing. Truthfully, I think the best way to describe Xenoblade's soundtrack is perfect. More specifically, perfectly suited for this game. Each song fits every corresponding moment of the game to a T, and is able to add fathoms of emotion, power and meaning to any and all situations, from the Gower Plains to Colony 9, RFC, Alchemoth, Prison Island and so on. Xenoblade Chronicles' score is something that stays in the hearts and minds of everyone who plays it, and without it, Xenoblade would be a mere shell of its true self. And of course, you can't talk about the soundtrack without mentioning what is widely considered the best piece of music in the game. You will know our names. The song that is synonymous with Xenoblade Chronicles, and for good reason. This song is so epic, so catchy, so blood pumping, toe tapping, heart pounding and downright outstanding that I could easily classify this as my favourite track in the game. This song plays whenever you face a powerful foe or sometimes a boss, and it goes above and beyond at motivating you to keep pushing forward and fight with all your heart. And when you turn the tide of battle in your favour and see victory within your grasp, it becomes a moment you never forget, and it fuels you with unlimited power. This is the same feeling you get when the Avengers assembled, when All Might went past Ultra and beyond, when Sonic and Shadow fought the final hazard, when Goku became a Super Saiyan, when Simone pierced the heavens. Whenever you hear this song, you will push through the forces that oppose you and let nothing stand in your way, and make it so that you will know our names! I'm also quite the fan of Xenoblade's voice acting. Everyone has a very distinguished speech pattern and accent that suits their respective characters so well. Not to mention, I think the actors do a good job with their delivery, sounding very natural and putting lots of emotion into their performances. Granted, yes, sometimes it can be a bit over the top and everyone has this type of Cockney Britishness to them, but I really don't mind it, and it's not because I too am British. I just think it makes them sound more entertaining and memorable, and for characters like Dixon and Ryan, it works so well. Not to mention, the game is fully voice acted in cutscenes and during battles, and since there are quite a lot of these, it adds a sense of liveliness to the game. That's the main bulk of Xenoblade Chronicles, and as you can see, I think it's pretty damn fantastic. But even all of the small things and extra features like the phenomenal amount of side quests this game has that can easily eat up to 200 hours of game time, New Game Plus being designed in a way that all the stuff you missed in the first time round is available to you now, and other things like gem crafting, skill trees, affinity levels, heart to hearts and so on, add that extra layer of spice to an already delicious dish and complete this divine meal. I hope by now you can see why I and so many other people love this game, and surely this is enough to warrant it the title of masterpiece, right? Well, in my opinion, not exactly. Since like I said at the beginning, a masterpiece will often innovate, set or go beyond the standards within its respective fields, something I feel Xenoblade Chronicles doesn't do, with a few exceptions, as while it does so many things extremely well, I'd argue everything it has achieved has been done just as good if not better in other games even within the same genre. The story and characters of Xenoblade are fantastic and will hold a place in my heart forever, but I've played games with better stories or better characters. For an RPG, Xenoblade Chronicles has incredibly refreshing and enticing gameplay that avoids many negative aspects commonly associated with other games of its kind. However, I can think of quite a few games that have had more of an impact on how RPGs function, and personally, I think some games have more fitting and well-designed mechanics. Graphically speaking, this game is one of a kind and makes the best use out of what it can, but there have been games that were able to achieve a level of intense graphical quality with even more limitations for the time period, or have much more visually distinct and refined art styles. The soundtrack is certainly one of the best aspects of the game and is fantastic to listen to, but even I have to admit that other games have had soundtracks that I personally think are superior, even if it's only a few. Not to mention all the optional side quests and post-game content, while substantial, hasn't given me as much to do after the main quest or presented more of an incentive to play through the whole thing again as other titles. Heck, even though I've gone on and on about how amazing Xenoblade Chronicles is, it's not in my top 10 games of all time. I mean, it's in the top 15 for certain. But I've played games that I feel did more to revolutionize and shape the industry, have elements other games simply cannot hold a candle to, have had a stronger emotional connection with me, or I simply found more fun to play. So with all this going against it, why would Xenoblade Chronicles be considered a masterpiece? Well, in my opinion, it all comes down to one word. A word that perfectly describes an aspect of Xenoblade Chronicles that almost no other game has been able to replicate, and that word is harmony. Let's slow things down for a bit, shall we? The word harmony is used to describe a pleasant musical sound made by different notes being played or sung at the same time. With this in mind, I'd like you to envision every aspect of Xenoblade Chronicles as different musical notes, and each one of these notes are being played in perfect rhythm with each other, creating a truly blissful and intoxicating tune. That noise, that symphony, that is the type of blissful feeling you get when playing Xenoblade Chronicles. Everything about this game down to the last pixel is so cleverly thought out and ingeniously implemented that in my opinion, it's not far-fetched to call Xenoblade Chronicles a perfect video game. The game takes advantage of everything it has and uses it to the best of its abilities, turning limitations into strengths, using subtlety to add layers of depth, incorporating elements that affect both the story and gameplay. Knowing precisely how much to show the player, this game is an example of everything coming together and just clicking. Nothing present in the game is overbearing or unnecessary. No part is poorly designed, feels out of place, was a last minute decision or needed tweaking. Xenoblade Chronicles knows exactly what it wants to be and it becomes it. It embraces everything great about RPGs and is proud to do so. And it has something that makes a true masterpiece. Heart. When you play Xenoblade Chronicles, you can feel the love and passion everyone involved put into this game, and its fans are evidence of this. I don't think I've ever seen a video game have so much of an emotional connection onto countless individuals as much as Xenoblade Chronicles has, since the amount of love this game gets is not only astronomical, but also undeniably warranted. Why? Because at no point does Xenoblade try to turn you away or ruin the fun you're having. It never tries to be something it isn't or become self-indulgent. It does not cut corners due to laziness. Under no circumstances will the game think it's better than you or feel the need to force innovation where it isn't needed. It refuses to rely on cliches and tropes to tell its story or define its characters. Xenoblade stays true to itself, and honestly, I can't think of any major issues with this game. Granted, every game has flaws and no game is immune to criticism, but with Xenoblade, the only problems I had were more personal issues, like how towards the end I had to grind for a bit because of some of the enemy level spikes, which kinda killed the pace for me, and the fact that I'm not a fan of the Nopon, but that's just nitpicking. And while I'm sure there are those who can find one, if not multiple legitimate problems with this game, for me personally, there was nothing present that brought down my time playing Xenoblade Chronicles, something I cannot say for almost every other video game. I'm not sure how many people can relate to what I'm about to say, but how many times have you played a game where even though it's a wonderful ride and worthy of the praise it gets, there's always something holding it back, something that puts a damper on the experience and is the single, sometimes multiple, nasty stain on an otherwise spotless silk dress. Take Metroid Prime for example. Prime is a truly magnificent game that redefined the Metroid series, is one of the best of its kind, and I love it more and more every time I play it. But sweet Jesus, does the artifact hunting make the tail end of the game a bore. What about Symphony of the Night? A game so good it changed the course of Castlevania forever and is one of the best games on the PlayStation? Well, that inverted castle can be a hassle to complete, and it's very easy to break this game. Heck, let's look at Ocarina of Time. Often praised as one of the best games of all time and downright perfect in the eyes of many. Really? Because while I too think it's one of the best Zelda games ever and a crowning achievement for electronic entertainment, the last time I checked, it hasn't aged too well and that water temple sucks ass. I can even apply this to some of my favourite games of all time. Both Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie are my favourite 3D platformers, however the last couple of levels in those games can die in a fire. Order of Ecclesia stands as my favourite Castlevania game and is one of the best games I played on a handheld. Nevertheless, some of those bosses still give me nightmares and the game can be a cruel bitch at times. Even my favourite game of all time, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, is filled to the brim with problems and questionable design choices. And as much as I love this series, every single Fire Emblem game has something that doesn't work. Sometimes it's many issues, sometimes it's just a few, but it's always something. Yet, I still love all of these games because of what they excel in and the experience they deliver, and it comes as no surprise that some of them are universally accepted as masterpieces. This is one of the main reasons why Xenoblade deserves that title too. Not only is it a fantastic game and a magical experience, in my opinion, it's an otherwise spotless game. Never once during my time with Xenoblade did I say, I don't like using this character, or this plot point makes no sense, or this feature has no place here. Nothing about this game felt like it didn't belong. In fact, I can think of only one other game that reaches this level of polish and perfection, and that game is Bloodborne. Because of how seamlessly woven and otherwise flawless this game is, Xenoblade Chronicles stands as a testament to what video games are able to achieve, and how this type of experience is one only video games can provide. Its story is timeless and straightforward, yet deep and contemporary. Its characters are bold and excitable, but also human and close to our hearts. Its gameplay is simple and streamlined, while remaining engaging and strategic. Graphically it's pretty basic, however it harbours such detail and identity. The soundtrack is memorable, varied and delightful to listen to on its own and while playing the game, and only by being a video game can it mould these elements together. Xenoblade Chronicles would not work as a movie, or an anime, a book, a theatre production, heck it wouldn't work if it leaned more towards any other genre. Why? Because something would either be lost in translation or altered to fit that particular format, removing the otherwise perfect harmony Xenoblade Chronicles has. This idea of perfection and harmony is something I like to compare to Avatar: The Last Airbender and Fullmetal Alchemist in regards to the overall quality of Xenoblade Chronicles, since in my eyes, both of those series are some of the most perfectly scripted, perfectly paced and perfectly told stories ever. Everything from their characters, themes, humour, tone, animation and so on are so brilliantly stitched together that no aspect of either series falls flat on its face or doesn't work. And while yes, there are other TV series and anime that do some things better than both Avatar and Alchemist, they also have elements holding them back regardless of how great the final product is, something I don't think either of these franchises suffer from, and neither does Xenoblade Chronicles. You know something? For the longest time I heard left, right and centre how amazing this game was, and the impact it had on those who played it, and when I finally got the chance to play through the entire thing, I understood exactly where they were coming from. Sure, I didn't think it was the best game of all time or good enough to make my top 10, but that didn't mean I couldn't appreciate everything this game did and why it resonated with so many people. I understood and sympathised with how they felt, as the game was able to make a connection with me, and it truly is one of the best RPGs ever made. My outlook on Xenoblade Chronicles shares an almost identical parallel with my feelings towards the film Kimi no Na wa, otherwise known as Your Name. When this film came out, people went nuts, calling it one of the best anime films ever created and one of the most emotional and moving pieces of animation. And when I went to see it, I thought it was wonderful, a truly beautiful and breathtaking film. Did I think it was the best anime film ever? No. There are other Japanese animated films I've seen that I think are overall better, or I simply prefer for more personal reasons, but it still made an emotional connection with me as it did with so many other people, and I identified with everyone who was brought to tears by the movie. Xenoblade Chronicles is the exact same situation. I can't put into words just how amazing this game is, and frankly, I'm not worthy to. There is one person who truly understands just how remarkable Monolith Studios' magnum opus is, and only he can truly describe what it is like to play Xenoblade Chronicles. So Omniblade, the floor is yours.
Picture this. An era of gaming where the JRPG formula has become stale, formulaic, and dependent upon polygon count, linear corridors, and a plethora of overused tropes which have become standard for the genre. Characters are bland and one-dimensional just like the stories and worlds they take place in. Now, envision a game which is the polar opposite of that. Low poly count, muddy textures, and simplistic animations, but with all that came a defined art style, characters rich with development, and a massive world that explored lush fields, a frigid tundra, and a well-paced story. This is what Xenoblade Chronicles is. A game which deviated from the norm and dared to venture into uncharted waters, as it created what is widely considered the best RPG of the 7th console generation. I cannot praise the excellent writing, the brilliant combat system, the smooth pacing of the game's narrative, the wonderfully colorful cast, the glorious soundtrack, which was done by just 6 people, the art style, which is still one of my favorites in any video game after all these years later, and the voice acting. All hail British voice acting! Xenoblade was the light that shone for fans of JRPGs everywhere, as we had our faith renewed in this declining genre. You want to know how important this game is to me? I don't even think I'd be here, or be playing video games at all to this day, were it not for Xenoblade Chronicles.
Well, what else is there to say? I've gone on and on talking about how impeccable this game is, and just now Omniblade has summed up everything that needs to be said about Xenoblade Chronicles and why it means so much to people. If you haven't yet, I implore you to play this game and be swept away by one of the greatest games in recent memory. And if you meet anyone who's had the pleasure of playing Xenoblade Chronicles all the way through, ask them what they thought of the game, and they'll tell you the same. And this is why Xenoblade Chronicles is such an amazing game. This is why it is one of the most cherished experiences someone can have in the virtual world. This is why Xenoblade Chronicles has evolved from a single game into its own franchise, with just as much love and care put into every game after it. This is why playing Xenoblade Chronicles makes me proud that I love video games and all that they have done for me. This is what makes Xenoblade Chronicles a masterpiece. Thank you all for watching today, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I had so much fun making this video and sharing my love for this marvelous game, so feel free to tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and how you feel in regards to Xenoblade Chronicles, because I never get tired of seeing just how passionately people describe their time with Xenoblade. Once again, thank you all for watching. Be sure to give this video a like, as it really helps out the channel and it means a lot to me, and also consider subscribing if you like these types of videos and want to see more. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and let me know if you want to keep updated with what I'm doing, or just have a friendly chat with me. Also, a big thank you to the Omniblade for helping me out with this video and sharing his input on the game. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll see you all next time.